Welcome back to Inside City Hall's debate among the four candidates running for the 7th Congressional District, which includes parts of Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens. Congresswoman Nydia Velazquez, Councilman Erik Dilan, economist Dan O'Connor, and Occupy Wall Street activist George Martinez. It is time we said we'd let you each ask a question of one other person here. We'll ask you to make it really a question, not a preamble, not a speech, but a question that they can answer. And we'll start with you, Congresswoman.
Sure. Councilman Erik Dilan, you represent one of the poorest districts in New York City. And my question to you is, do you think it's morally right as a public elected officials to earmark millions of dollars to a community-based organization, Richwood Bushwick, that is controlled and founded by your patron, Vito Lopez, county boss, the Kings County Democratic boss. This organization has been under investigation, and the two top executives, it is public knowledge, that one was making over $600,000, the other was making $350,000. And even when...
I think we have that as a question.
Well, my answer to that would be very simple. It was looked at, it was under investigation for a long time, and I don't think there's any nonprofit in the city that would have survived that level of scrutiny. Now, what I would say, this is an organization that's provided affordable housing for many low-income people, probably more than any other organization throughout this entire state. They provided youth services, youth centers. So I saw the results of all my money, of the money that the taxpayers had, that we appropriated, come back to my community. So if you ask me if it's morally right, yeah, I saw the result.
I saw the two top executives to make almost $1 million.
I saw the results.
Almost $1 million
in my community.
You know how many people are unemployed in your district?
I thought the question was directed towards me, and there was no cross-talking. I objected to another point that she said, and I kept my mouth shut. So if I could finish my point, what I would say is I saw the results of what I did. So yes, I think it's morally right. And there's a dispute as to what the payments were and what the salaries were for these individuals. We'll let the people that were looking into it handle it. But for many years of investigation and many public dollars spent, where are the results? Where's the arrests? Where are they?
I'll allow you to ask a question as well.
Well, I want to ask to one of my colleagues, to Mr. O'Connor, to Mr. O'Connor. You've been a staunch critic of the current incumbent in terms of the amount of banking contributions that we received. Obviously, we see she's a member of the Financial Services Committee. And you saw how she handled the bank bailout. Mr. Lewis, the moderator, asked me what I would have done different in terms of how I would have handled the bank bailouts. What would you have done differently if you were a member of Congress?
I would not have approved of the bank bailouts. In fact, I think it is one of the best examples of the crony capitalism that we see in America. We see big business in bed with the government. It's just another perfect example of it. The politicians in Washington, they sold it to the public as something that was necessary, but it certainly was not necessary. They sold it that way in order to do favors for their friends in Wall Street, on Wall Street. And Nydia Velazquez voted in support of this. It's not a surprise, as most of her campaign donations do come from Wall Street. And on top of it, Representative Velazquez voted against auditing the Federal Reserve, which we later found out shelled out $16 trillion to large banks and central banks across the globe. It's an affront to the democratic system that we live in here in America. It's an affront to the people living in poverty in this country. And on top of it, these same banks have been foreclosing in houses all across our district. I cannot justify that.
Okay. You can ask a question now of someone here.
Sure. I guess on that same issue then, most people in our district...
Who's the question to?
Representative Velazquez. Mm-hmm. On that same issue, as a person who's been campaigning all across the district for a year, the biggest complaint that I often get is the fact that money does control policy in Washington. And as a recipient of campaign donations, Goldman Sachs is one of your biggest donors, JP Morgan Chase, American Banking Association. You voted for the bailouts. You didn't want to audit the Fed. And Bloomberg Business recently unveiled that you transferred most federal loans away from small businesses into the hands of large financial institutions and corporations. This is what they unveiled in the news recently. So what have you been doing to curb corporate influence in Washington, and how do you justify your positions based on the accusations from the Small Business Association?
Sure. I'm very proud of my voting record. You know, I am on both and on both. And so when you look at how I vote, I voted for the bailout. I'm proud of that vote because we need it to provide the kind of help to help this economy. Most economists, maybe with the exception of you, in this country agreed, and they have become before the Financial Services Committee and before my committee, to say that if it wasn't for the bailout, we don't know what would have happened. What did you want it to happen? For the capital markets to collapse? Where will this? Learn from the experience of Europe right now. And let me just say, you know, because you read the papers and every report that is out there, that a good government group issue a report where they compare all the 435 members of Congress and the money that they get. I was ranked number 4 as the least likely to vote with the interest of those who have contributed to my campaign.
I would have to see that
so
report. I would have to see how the way that was calculated.
I'm very proud of that record.
I highly doubt
That's
that
fair enough.
that
That's
is
it.
the case.
That is her answer. George Martinez, your question.
My question is for Councilmember Dilan. Considering that Congressperson Velazquez has voted to repeal Glass-Steagall, voted for all the bank bailouts.
Excuse me, I did not vote for Glass-Steagall.
Yeah, it's on the record.
No, I did not vote for
I
Glass-Steagall.
believe the question is directed
well,
towards
no,
me.
I
I
will have
check that.
time.
We'll check
if I could
that.
have
Yes.
the
No, we'll
opportunity
okay.
to hear the question and answer.
Great.
No, but I,
And considering that it's reported that 92% at least of all of the congressperson's funding for a candidacy comes from banks and corporate PACs, how do you expect to lead the progressive charge forward to get money out of politics when you have taken over $100,000 of local real estate lobbyist and interest money in this particular election?
Well, I would say just it's a pittance compared to what the current incumbent has received. And real estate interests in New York City certainly didn't bankrupt the nation. And I've also collected donations from regular New Yorkers throughout the city who are interested in supporting my campaign as well as his campaign. And I'm not sure how much money, if any, you have raised. So what I will say is, when I get elected, I've always voted the conscience of my people, and people could say I'm unbossed and I'm bought, but I've always got elected. I didn't get appointed to the city council by a party boss. There's somebody on this panel that indeed did. So what I would say is the people's interest in my mind will always come first, has always come first, and there's no Shirley Chisholm at this table. But what I would say is it's very interesting how somebody sits on the Financial Services Committee and then gets tons of money from the banking industry, and there's no credit flowing to small business, and you could say, hey, well, that's not the traditional way that it was done. Well, it wasn't a traditional economic collapse, and it was an unprecedented step to inject almost almost $1 trillion, about $800 billion into the system. We could have extracted more for the people of this
A
country.
real quick response.
yes. Glass-Steagall, I was one of the few members in the Financial Services Committee who voted against repealing Glass-Steagall. I saw back then that it would be the root cause of what caused the financial collapse, financial collapse. And regarding small businesses and lending, no one in Congress, no one including Republicans, have done more to make sure that we provide financing option for small businesses, and I am proud of that record.
Regard, you did a good job.
I am proud of
in
that
regard,
record.
you did a good job. But the fact remains,
But
during the recession, credit wasn't flowing in any form to small businesses.
Okay, we're out of time for this segment. We're going to continue the conversation in just a moment, but right now we're going to take a break. Later on, we're going to ask New York One political director Bob Hart which political stories he's watching for next week. Stay with us.